What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football. And today we're breaking down the marquee matchups for week 4, 12 games we'll get into. Before we get started, like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you do enjoy the content, that is, it helps a small channel like this a ton if you've done any of that. And I always forget to say it, but this is the first video we do this week. We have a video dedicated to the under the radar games, the G5 games, the greasy games. If there's one you want to see that's not covered in this video, please leave it in the comments. Generally, that whole video is all requests. So yeah, last thing, if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. We're talking sides and totals as we discuss these matchups. So just want to say that. Okay, we're going to start things off in the SEC. Auburn takes on Oklahoma. The spread is 6 points in favor of the home team, the Sooners. The total is 48.5 in this game. Starting to get more data points in general on all of these teams. Auburn has played some pretty competent opponents to this point. They have a win over Baylor, a pretty decent win too. They had a 98% post-game win expectancy, 38-24. Baylor actually outgained Auburn in the contest, but there were a bunch of turnovers, some key turnover on downs, and Auburn absolutely demolished Baylor on the ground, mostly via Jackson Arnold too. Since then, they beat Ball State and South Alabama. Nothing crazy there, but at least we're not playing FCS teams. Last week, they did hold a lot of players out, so you might see a 5.4 to 4.6 yards per play advantage and think that was a little bit narrow. It was, but a lot of players were injured and just not playing in the game for precautionary reasons. Oklahoma also has some pretty good data points too. They knock off Illinois State, but then win over Michigan, 24-13. Quality win as well. The only real nuances in that game, Justice Haynes had a 75-yard touchdown run. If that doesn't happen, the score is probably wider, and some of the efficiency metrics are better for Oklahoma. Both teams missed field goals. There were 2 turnovers. Michigan just couldn't score on this Oklahoma defense. And then last week they played Temple, who is by no means a bad G5 team. I actually like Temple for a lot of reasons, as many people do. So that's a good win. As far as the injuries in this game goes, it's hard to look at Auburn and really know what's serious. They treated South Alabama like a JV team. I think Champ Anthony maybe is at risk of missing this game. We'll have to see on their injury report midweek. Oklahoma has a couple more serious injuries. R. Mason Thomas, first of all, not an injury. He got a targeting. He's not going to play in the first half. Keontez Lewis took a nasty hit at wide receiver. He likely has a concussion. Not sure on him. Eli Bowen has not played this year either at defensive back. Rest of the injuries don't seem all that serious. So diving into the matchups, let's begin this on the Auburn side, where they have the former Oklahoma quarterback, Jackson Arnold, former 5-star. It's been a weird ride for him. He has all the hype from the bowl game at Oklahoma, disappoints last year where every skill position player, every offensive lineman got hurt, a disastrous situation, he gets benched. Goes to Auburn, situation's much better. His completion percentage is 69.5%, 7.3 yards per attempt, 1 big-time throw, 2 turnover-worthy plays. But the biggest thing with his game is they're not giving him a lot of volume. They're treating him like Oklahoma did and using him as a battering ram on the ground. He has 5.5 yards per carry. Still taking 6 sacks on a 22% pressure rate. So that's not good. 32% pressure to sack ratio. This needs to be cleaned up for Jackson Arnold. We're seeing some of the same issues we've seen before. And I do like his skill position players. Cam Coleman, he's a 5-star. Eric Singleton from Georgia Tech. Horatio Fields from Wake Forest. Malcolm Simmons, another 4-star. A lot of them have been banged up and held out, so their numbers aren't great. That's elite on paper. It's definitely better than what Oklahoma had last year, but it still has not been maximized. Then on the ground, Damari Alston's been hurt. Jeremiah Cobb has filled in nicely against 2 G5 teams. Overall, it's a good situation that has just been limited by the schedule. So it's hard to know what we're dealing with, but I would argue it is better than what Arnold had before. The offensive line, also better. This was supposed to be an average offensive line heading into the season, and that's about what they've been. They're 73rd in pass blocking, 20th in run blocking. The O-line metric you see on the screen is an aggregation of those 2 numbers. But they're facing Oklahoma's defense, who, first of all, you've got Venables. facing his former quarterback. If anyone knows how to prepare for this guy, it should be him. Nowadays, a Hugh Freeze offense, so that's a little bit tricky. But Oklahoma's defense has been solid. They held Michigan to 5.9 yards per attempt through the air. That's Bryce Underwood. They did get beat a little bit on the ground, but remember, 4.6 yards per carry. Most of that came on that 75-yard Jamal Haynes run. So I'm pretty impressed with this team with their 7 starters back. Their defensive line is very experienced. They're actually getting some of their younger elite recruits on the field, like David Stone, the 5-star. And that's been important because Demonic Williams hasn't actually played that well at defensive tackle. The only real question I have is, okay, you have our Mason Thomas suspended for the first half. Maybe you need to manufacture a little more on the edge. Secondary should have been a question coming into the year because of health, but they're starting to get players back. Kendall Doby returned in their last game. They're going to get Bowen back at some point. The defense is a little more complete than I thought it was going to be coming into the year. So far, biggest concern's been run defense, with Demonic Williams just needing to play a little bit better like he did last year. I'm not super concerned with that unit. I do think they can cause some problems for Auburn in this game, especially if they're not going to open up their offense at all. On the other side, Mateer, I think you have to give the edge to Oklahoma quarterback-wise. Mateer has shown a lot. Towards the top of the Heisman ranking, 67.5% completion, 9 yards per attempt, 5 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays. That's probably the area of his game he needs to clean up the most, just take fewer risks. The mobility is still there, 4.9 yards per carry. Pressure to sack ratio is a little high at 26%, but nothing crazy there. Skill position players are better for Oklahoma as well compared to last year, and certainly better than what he played with at Washington State. At running back, Torrey Blaylock has kind of iced the competition. It is Blaylock 1, Javante Barnes 2, Jaden Ott 3, to the dismay of people that don't understand the level of competition. Jaden Ott from Cal, turns out you can't just walk into Oklahoma's backfield and expect to carry the load, but there have been some injury rumors for Ott. Anyway, it's a deep backfield. I can't believe what they've done with some of their other positions too. Jaron Canuck, a converted linebacker, is leading the team in receiving, now playing tight end, 245 yards. He looks like the favorite target of Mateer. I don't know. He's been awesome. Deion Burks has been fine, 225 yards. Keontez Lewis has been fine when he's healthy. He took that nasty hit in their last game. But honestly, they haven't had Giovanni Gibson, the Pine Bluff transfer. He's been warming up. He might play in this game. Zion Carney and Ivan Carrion are former 4-stars as your depth pieces. This is still a pretty good unit. The offensive line has been better than expected. They're 17th in pass blocking, 96th in run blocking. They also should get back their 5-star Michael Fasusi for this game. He didn't play in their last contest. He just gives them a higher ceiling. Otherwise, coming into the year, we thought this was a below-average offensive line. They kind of needed to play their 5-star right away to access the ceiling, which I like that they've done. So there's a chance this is maximized more than we thought. Auburn's defense. Can Oklahoma move the ball? I think the answer is probably yes. They got gashed by Sawyer Robertson for 8.7 yards per attempt. And I also think 6.5 to Bishop Davenport is not that great either. They had 4 starters back in the secondary, so I'm a little concerned why they've been so bad. Only 6 starters total for them. But they come in 122nd. Now, Champ Anthony's been out, and Jaquez Robinson has been an utter disaster. He needs to get benched, and he kind of has been. They're sort of rotating guys back there a little bit more. But there's just no excuse for the secondary being that bad so far after they showed out last year and played well. Up front, Kedrick Falk, Kieran Crawford, they could give this Oklahoma offensive line problems. We're still not 100% sold on that unit. They've been banged up, and they're playing a freshman. Those are 2 elite edge rushers for Auburn, and they have a very good defensive line. Their run defense has been awesome too, which is a big part of Oklahoma's game with Mateer. Now, Mateer makes things difficult, but I still think there are some ways Auburn can stop this team. Now, when you look to the spread, 6.5 is a lot of points, even for the home team. Auburn is a quality team overall, well-built, strong at almost every single position. I don't believe the secondary is that much of a weakness for this team. And the infrastructure is great on offense behind an O-line that we respect. Probably not going to take this at 6.5, but it is a lean for us right now. If you look at the game, we make this closer to a field goal. The total is interesting. Both of these teams are playing faster than expected, and we've actually taken Oklahoma's pace, which is above where we have it, and regressed it to something similar to what Washington State and mid-tier played at last year, we still get some value to the over. My fear, what does the Auburn offense do against this Oklahoma defense? Auburn's defense is good as well. You have two awesome defenses facing mobile signal callers. So these are both hesitations. We are going to wait and see where both of these numbers go. Maybe would consider a 6 or a 7, I should say, with Auburn if it ever got there, but it doesn't appear like it will. Next up, Texas Tech versus Utah. Fun game out in the Big 12, 3-point spread in favor of the home Utah team. They have an awesome home field advantage. Totals 58 points. We bet Texas Tech at a +4. Would like to get this before it moves inside 3, which there's a good chance it does. Texas Tech has played nobody, but they've been covering spreads. They just murdered Oregon State last week, beat Kent State, Pine Bluff in week 1. Utah beat Wyoming. That was on the road, so it's a good win. They also beat Cal Poly and UCLA 43-10. That UCLA win, it hasn't aged poorly, but UCLA just fired their coach. It is not the marquee victory a lot of people thought it was in week 1. Injury-wise, Texas Tech held a lot of guys out over these couple of weeks. I think the biggest risk is Amir Boyd, who got suspended for reckless driving. They won't comment on him, so we don't know when he's coming back. Utah has a couple injuries. Rabbit Evans got carted off in their last game. Logan Fano, their linebacker, edge rusher type, he's been severely limited the last 3 weeks as he's tried to play through injury and failed to do so. And then Dallas Vakalahi's been banged up as well. So there are more injuries, most of them on the defensive side for Utah. In this game, Baron Morton has been awesome. He's a returning starter at quarterback, so nothing that was underachieving outside expectation. I would argue he's actually played above expectation with his near 70% completion, 11.3 yards per attempt, 6 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play. The skilled players are awesome. Coy Eakin's back. Caleb Douglas is back. They bring in Terrence Carter from Louisiana to play tight end. They also add Reggie Virgil from Miami, Ohio as a role piece. Plus, Michael Hudson still hasn't fully emerged as the 5-star talent he is. Their run game, they lose Quentin Joyner, but the replacements have been adequate with Cameron Dickey and Jacoby Williams. Kind of thought that would be the case. So the skill players seem like they're just fine. The offensive line, this is a unit that was expected to be above average coming into the year. They add some good transfers, Will Jados, Howard Sampson. Those are not the most talented players on the unit, probably the biggest questions, but they had 3 good starters back, and they've lived up to expectation. Utah's defense has been good. We thought they were going to be good coming into the year. Held Nico Iamaleava to 6.2 yards per attempt, dominated in run defense. They did only return 5 starters, and some of them have been injured. Rabbit Evans, Logan Fano, and Dallas Vakalahi. Their secondary has been kind of up and down outside of Jackson Beanie and Tao Johnson. I think you can win over the top. That's what Texas Tech wants to do. The best unit for Utah is their linebackers. They've been somewhat limited on the defensive line because of injuries, but they've still played very well. I still think you want to attack this Utah team over the top. That's exactly what Texas Tech is going to try to do. So there's an immediate advantage there. On the other side, Devin Dampier, relatively untested, but he has also answered every question so far. Again, did they play above or below expectation against competition? I would argue Dampier's been above. 73% completion, 7.2 yards per attempt, only 1 turnover-worthy play. He leads the team in rushing. That's his best skill. Only taken 2 sacks. The skilled players are definitely not as good as Texas Tech's. Run game, solid with Wayshawn Parker. He's at 7.1 yards per carry. That tandem, Wayshawn Parker and Dampier, has been awesome. Their receivers, though, leave a lot to be desired. Ryan Davis is your number 1. He's a New Mexico transfer, so the continuity's there with Dampier. But your second leading receiver is a tight end in Dallin Bentley. Your other transfers like Tobias Merriweather, he has 88 yards. Just leaves a little bit to be desired. Now, Utah hasn't been pushed. So if they are, maybe the receivers are a little better than expected. I still think they're better than last year, just trailing Texas Tech in that area. This was supposed to be the best offensive line in the Big 12. I don't think they've shown any reason for us to doubt that. So it won't belabor this point. Utah has an amazing offensive line. Texas Tech has been awesome on defense. It's against weak teams. Again, we're trying to do what was the expectation? Did they exceed it? The answer, I think, is yes. They had 6 starters back on defense, going back to what we thought of the preseason. Most of those are in the back 7. So the secondary, it's in a good spot with returning production. Up front, what did they do? They bring in David Bailey from Stanford, Romello Height from Georgia Tech, Lee Hunter from UCF, and Skylar Gill-Howard from Northern Illinois. Some of the best transfers in the portal on the defensive line. They are not number 1. I know this. They're probably not even a top 20 unit, but sitting around 30th in total defense, I think that is what we expected coming into the year. And so far, they have not shown any reason to doubt that. It is going to be the toughest test Utah has faced. Can they actually exceed expectation against Texas Tech? I'm not sure. I think there's value in the Texas Tech defense in this area of the game. And all of this is why we've come out and bet Texas Tech +4 immediately in the contest. I think a +3 is still fine at the current number. This is one where you're really leaning into home advantage if you're liking the Utah side. You can't argue level of competition for either team because neither team has played anyone competent yet. SMU TCU, we have a 6.5 point spread in favor of the Horned Frogs, a 64 total. So far, SMU beat an FCS team. Then they lost to Baylor, where they actually had a 51% post-game win expectancy, 1 yards per play. SMU missed 3 field goals, and they played really cowardly at the end of that game. They also threw a red zone interception. It was a messy game across the board. Baylor had their own share of turnovers, so is what it is. You can't have those coin flip games come down to field goals, and SMU miss them. Anyway, they followed that up with a Missouri State win 28-10 last week. They still had turnover problems in that game. They had 12 penalties. They also missed another field goal. So the field goals are a problem for SMU. They don't have a good kicker. The penalties are an issue. They're beating themselves more than anything else. TCU, it's been sound. They have a win over North Carolina with 2 defensive scores. So that has aged kind of poorly too. Then they beat Abilene Christian. They had a week 2 bye. So that's kind of a weird wrinkle for TCU. Injury-wise, SMU is rotating their O-line. I don't think these are injuries, but Savion Byrd may have been benched. Otherwise, Jordan Hudson, Alex Kilgore, Zaki Barker, those are your injuries. 2 linebackers and a receiver. TCU looks fully healthy. Let's start with the SMU side. The offense has been humming. The issue is the turnovers. Kevin Jennings has 8 turnover-worthy plays, and these could be worse. He only has 3 interceptions. He's also not running the ball. 17 rushing yards. He's taken 7 sacks, 28% pressure to sack ratio. Since Kevin Jennings in the college football playoff disappointed, it's like a 5-game sample now where things have they're up and down. They're not poor. He has a 71% completion, 9.4 yards per attempt. He has some big plays. Even some of those, like the first play in the Baylor game, the touchdown to Brinson, that should have been an interception, but the DB misplays it. So it's been a roller coaster ride for him. His weapons are worse, partially because of injury. You still don't have Hudson, so you're relying heavily on Brinson and Cooper. They're 4-star freshmen. They're actually playing 2 tight ends. They're basically just lining up RJ Maryland as a slot receiver, and he's off to a slow start off the season-ending injury last year, 66 yards. The run game has been a lot worse. Harden has been okay, but they're still giving too many carries to their freshmen, Jermecco Green and Derek McFall, especially. He keeps starting. He's been a disaster out there. But that's not been the answer for Brashard Smith. Got to give TJ Harden and Chris Johnson a little more work. So the skill players are a little worse. It's a lot more on the shoulders of Jennings. The O-line has been good. This is what is kind of confusing. They had a top 3 O-line coming into the year. They haven't been trusting it for whatever reason. They're rotating 2 of their spots. And maybe this is a good thing. Like Savion Byrd has just played so bad. He needs to be benched at this point. And they're still a decent O-line in spite of him playing a lot. The infrastructure is good. Jennings has just held onto the ball for a long time and taken too many sacks on pressures that aren't there. TCU's defense is still a pretty big question. The first thing I'll say about this unit, they do turn over a lot of players, only 5 starters back. Expected them to be pretty average across the board, with maybe the secondary being their strength, returning players like Bud Clark. But this is the number 1 recruiting team in the Big 12 by a mile. So they have more talented depth pieces than most other teams. What have they allowed so far? They allowed 8.2 yards per attempt to Gio Lopez, a couple of big plays there. Otherwise, they have the couple pick sixes. It's a good defensive showing overall. They did allow 9.5 yards per attempt to Abilene Christian, FCS team, but they have Stone Earl as their quarterback, a name many of you may have known. He's been in the FBS before, just transferred down for playing time. So the output is kind of questionable to me for TCU in 2 games. I think SMU can move the ball here as long as you have some resistance. Like, let's reel in the turnover-worthy plays a little bit, Kevin Jennings, and your team should be playing better. I mean, that's about all it is. On the TCU side, Josh Hoover's been awesome so far, 76% completion, 9.9 yards per pass attempt. He's yet to take a sack. The O-line's been very good. Skill players, not as good as last year after all those NFL departures, but still pretty decent. Kavoria Barnes has surprised at 7.4 yards per carry. Got a little banged up, but he looks fine. Jordan Dwyer might be the wide receiver 1 here, which would be a surprise after what Eric McAllister did in the bowl game and on a small sample. But the Idaho transfer is 225 yards. Dwyer's been good. Manjack's been fine as a rotational player. The Houston transfer, it's a decent receiving group. I think a little worse than last year, but still nothing that Hoover can't work with. O-line's been pretty good so far. And I would just highlight level of competition. We did not expect this to be a good O-line. Actually had it graded as one of the worst units in the Big 12 after they lost 2 starters. And one of their returning starters was Ben Taylor Whitfield. He's been horrible through his career, but he's actually played well through 2 games. He's gotten some NFL draft hype for whatever reason. It's probably a size thing. But if he's playing better, we need to upgrade this O-line quickly. I think it is just need to see it against a better team, which they will be facing one here in SMU, who has a pretty good defensive line. It's mainly made through transfers, but Cameron Robertson and Isaiah Smith have been awesome so far. And then we know their secondary is at least, there's 2 good safeties, Ahmad Moses and Isaiah Nicobia. They did still allow 8.8 yards per attempt to Sawyer Robertson, 7.2 yards per attempt to Jacob Clark. They've had some penalties. The defense in total only had 3 starters back, but still they have been pretty good compared to expectation in who they faced so far. So definitely going to be more resistance for TCU. My biggest concern with them is still that offensive line. I need to see a little bit more from BTW before we actually go out and anoint TCU the team in the Big 12 this year. But for the record, they were one of the teams I like the most, Texas Tech and TCU. Again, teams just don't recruit like TCU in this conference. So this one's going to be a pass. If you made me take a side, it would be a SMU plus the 7. You can't really talk me into the over right now with some of the offensive concerns on both teams, but pacing is decent. The TCU should be playing faster when they're in more competitive games. SMU is going to play really fast, so we know that. We're going to wait and see and just gather some information on this game as the week goes on. Florida, Miami. All right, this is a fun one. Currently sitting at 7.5 in favor of the home team. Miami, no surprise there. The total's 51.5, which might be a little surprising as far as what we've seen. Florida has now lost to USF by 2 points and LSU by 10 points. The big problem with USF is they kicked 3 field goals in the red zone and had a ton of penalties. They also had some questionable clock management. Against LSU, I can't believe they didn't win, I can't believe they didn't lose by more. They had 5 interceptions, but LSU only managed to score 10 points off those turnovers, and one of them was a pick 6. It was an ugly overall game, and we'll have more time to talk LSU in the future and their offensive struggles. But Florida, to be honest with you, they actually didn't play that bad. Lagway played the worst game I've ever seen, and that's what lost them the game. Their defense did a good job. Their offense hung the defense out to dry for sure. On the Miami side, the data points are awesome. They just slaughtered that very same USF team that beat Florida. They have a win over Notre Dame, who's looked amazing in defeat outside of their defense. Nothing to really be said about Miami. This is a top 5 team in the country right now. Injuries, JoJo Trader hasn't really played yet for Miami. The Florida defensive line is very banged up. Caleb Banks has been battling injury, trying to play through it. LJ McCray and Makai Boiro have been out. Let's start with Florida's offense because Lagway, it actually hasn't been as bad as it looked. It's been bad. But he has a 71% completion, 6.4 yards per attempt. He's not attempting a lot of downfield stuff, and when he is, it's super risky. He has 5 big-time throws, 8 turnover-worthy plays, 6 of which have been converted to interceptions. He's not running. He's taken 6 sacks. It's not been pretty for Lagway. I don't know why. My hypothesis is just injuries in the offseason. Didn't get a lot of development time because he's been hurt. His receivers have been hurt or they're freshmen. You need to develop with those players, and they haven't had that time. Not to mention Napier's kind of running a vanilla offense. But anyway, on paper, the supporting cast is good. Jaden Baugh has been awesome at running back. Jacoby Jackson's getting too much work. He's sucked at 3.0 yards per carry. Baugh's at 6.6. They need to give all that work to Baugh. The pass catchers have actually been pretty good. Vernell Brown has played well for a freshman. Hayden Hansen's been okay at tight end. Sturdivant's a waste of space. He should not be on the field. Play Mazzell, he's been awesome in glimpses. And Eugene Wilson, I'm not sure if the injuries limited him. It just doesn't seem like he's fully up to speed. See, it's kind of an up and down supporting cast. I thought they'd be better. And they should be because the O-line is awesome. And this is another reason there's no excuse for Lagway's play. This was a top 3 O-line coming into the year. They've been 4th in the country in pass blocking. They've had one kind of weak link in Bryce Lovett. They just benched him for Caden Jones, which has gone well. This O-line is awesome, and they're giving Lagway all the time in the world. No excuse for the way Lagway's played. And unfortunately, it's going to get harder. The toughest test is in front of them. Miami's defense is awesome. This is the best edge tandem maybe in the nation, and it's the best edge tandem he's faced so far. Akeem Mesidor and Ruben Bain are going to absolutely make life tough. Miami has a rebuilt secondary. They have a new DC in Corey Heatherman, but they've gone out and portaled in a lot of players, some of which have been up and down, but what you can say about the secondary, they come in 50th. They're better than last year with names like Ethan O'Connor, Xavier Lucas, Charles Brantley, Zechariah Poyser. It's just a better, more talented unit on top of having a lot of good recruits. I don't think their secondary is going to be the best. I do think that is how you want to beat this team. Just have no confidence that Florida can do this right now with their quarterback situation and receiving game. On the other side, Carson Beck looks like an early favorite for Heisman. I believe he's 1 or 2 in the Heisman. It's him and Mateer, basically, I've seen in most places up at the top. And it makes sense. Left out to dry by Georgia after Mike Bobo kind of tried to run his career into the ground. But joke's on Mike Bobo. It looks like Carson Beck will get the last laugh. 79% completion, 9.9 yards per attempt, only 1 turnover-worthy play. He actually has 2 interceptions. One of these is credited to a different player, a skilled player. He's not a runner, but he's only taken 2 sacks. The pressure rate's been awesome. This is a good O-line. We thought this was a top 3 ACC O-line heading into the season. The only problem they've really have had is penalties, and Matthew McCoy's been the culprit of those, but they just inserted a 5-star into his place on the interior, Samson Okunlola. The returns have been awesome there. Okunlola was supposed to be a tackle, and it just hasn't worked out, partially because they have really good tackles. So sticking him at guard, giving him a shot there has made a lot of sense. The O-line has been incredible, and it's paved the way for Mark Fletcher, 6.5 yards per carry. Shamar Brown from North Dakota State's been good. The receivers have been awesome. And the thesis for Miami coming into the season, if they were to access this ceiling we've seen so far, it was probably going to come from their young 4-stars. They lose everybody in their receiving core. They bring in C.J. Daniels from LSU. It's okay. It is what it is. Keelan Marion from BYU. He's more of a role player. You love him on special teams, but it's a tough transition from BYU to Miami. They bring in Malachi Toney and Joshua Morris, 4-star freshmen. These are elite, highly touted players. They're playing right away. They're playing well. Moore just had a couple touchdowns last week. Tony's made some incredible catches. They've accessed their ceiling via this youth. You just love to see it from Miami. And Florida's defense, for everything they've done well, they've been crushed by injuries. They're still going to be missing a couple guys on this defensive line coming into this game. Tyreek Sapp has also not played well after the Elite 2024. The secondary looks improved, but they're still rotating a lot. Like Sharif Denson, Aaron Gates have been liabilities. Their snaps have been dropped. They just started Cormani McClain, which actually looks to have been a good choice for them. So there's no continuity in the secondary. Injuries have crushed the defensive line. Sapp has disappointed maybe because of the running mates near him getting hurt. We'll see. You can poke holes in this Florida defense, and I think Miami is the side in this game. This is one we probably will bet, have not bet yet. Was looking for a 7. This opens at 9.5 in favor of Miami. Florida takes a ton of money, and I'm thinking this might get down to 7. So far, 7.5 has been the resistance point. It might come back up. We'll probably play a Miami side at 7.5 if we have to. Just if we can get a 7, we'll wait and see if we get there. Personally, I don't think it does. Illinois, Indiana. 4.5-point spread in favor of Indiana. The total is 52.5. So far, haven't seen much from either team. Illinois beat Western Illinois. They beat Duke in a game where Duke beat themselves with 5 turnovers. That resulted in 28 Illinois points. I actually think Duke looked like they could have won that game at various points. And then they beat Western Michigan. Indiana, it's kind of been the same. They beat Old Dominion in a game where they kind of got a scare, 27-14. But since then, I think Old Dominion's a team that needs to be respected after they slaughtered Virginia Tech. They beat Kennesaw State 56-9, and then they beat Indiana State. It is what it is. Those last 2 data points are not very important. Injuries, it's kind of just Justin Bowick for Illinois, Lee Beebe for Indiana. Let's start with the Illinois offense. This is the unit I have less confidence in. Luke Altmaier, 70% completion, 9 yards per attempt. He doesn't have a turnover-worthy play yet, but he has taken 8 sacks. The pressure rate's at 30%. It's bad. The pressure-to-sack ratio is 29%. That's bad. This O-line returned almost everybody. They were an average unit last year that got pretty lucky to succeed as they did. We had this as a below-average offensive line coming into the season. Their returning starters are just not good enough to compete with the heavies in this conference. Melvin Priestley is an FCS transfer. J.C. Davis is a New Mexico transfer. They just don't have a lot of talent on this team. They have a lot of experience. Generally, experienced, under-recruited players have a ceiling. Once you get to that ceiling, it is hard for them to push to the next level. So it is no real surprise that Illinois' O-line has not shown a step forward this year. The skilled players actually might be better, and part of this is just getting back Caden Fegan from injury. He's a dynamic back. He's a big back. He complements Lawfrey, who's going to be back in this game well. Valentine's been decent. The run game is not the problem for Illinois, only what's in front of them. Blocking, that is. The receiving game, Hank Beatty has been awesome with 289 yards. I still really question if there's enough talent here for them to replace what they lost last year, like Pat Bryant, Hudson Clement, Justin Bowick. They're low-level transfers, so there's not a lot around Beatty either. Maybe with more tape, you can just isolate him, dedicate more resources to him. Like Pons, just put D'Angelo Pons on him all game so far, erase their best player on offense, at least among the pass catchers. And that's what I think they should do. Indiana's defense has been pretty good so far with 5 starters back, but those starters are mainly studs. We mentioned Pons, Mikael Kamara off the edge. They've been awesome to begin the year. The only wrinkle that has caused them problems is that QB run game. Colton Joseph had 179 yards on the ground. That's the only thing they've done that's been bad. Kennesaw State had a bunch of garbage time points. We won't look too much into that, but Altmaier's not a runner. You don't have that potential advantage in your back pocket. Now, maybe the run defense is just not good and the backs will have success for Illinois. But right now, I'm buying this Indiana defense. They've done well in the portal to fill their gaps. And what they return, their best starters. We have an edge towards Indiana's defense. On the other side, Mendoza, he's a hard player for me to evaluate. The system at Cal, the infrastructure was so poor. He was under pressure all the time. So I didn't have the biggest, I guess I should say the best opinion of him, but I knew there was sort of upside based on what was around him. And so far it's been good. 9.1 yards per attempt, only 1 turnover-worthy play. He's actually up at 4.8 yards per carry, and he's only taken 1 sack. Part of that because Indiana's offensive line is good. We thought this might be a question coming into the season, and they've sort of been taking this time against low-level competition to sort things out. Zen Mikowski, the Ohio State transfer, has been at a disaster, and they've started to rotate other guys in. We thought this was probably the biggest question with their offense to begin the year, and so far, to me, that is still the case. I would argue it's been a little above expectation, but still probably the biggest question. The skill players are good. Kalen Black, Roman Hemby, both above 5.5 yards per carry. Solid replacement for what they lost. Receiving game is solid as well. Omar Cooper is leading the team. Elijah Surratt's only at 164 yards, and EJ Williams has been a good role player. It's a solid trio of receivers for Mendoza to play with. Illinois' defense has kind of played unexpected, I would say. Thought the secondary was the strength. They have 8 starters back, most of those in the secondary, but they just allowed 9.1 yards per attempt to Darian Mensah. It's actually been the run defense that's held up. And they did bring in some transfers like Tomiwa Durje from Florida State, James Thompson for Wisconsin. The defense has played about how we've expected, average to slightly above average, just not in the ways we expected. with their secondary being victimized and their front seven being the problem. This is the exact opposite of what we anticipated. So maybe, honestly, the secondary isn't quite as good, and I'm not buying the defensive line just yet. I think Indiana has clear advantages over this Illinois defense as well. It's sitting in no man's land at 4.5. I probably should have taken the 4 yesterday when it was out there, but was maybe going to see if it tested 3. It did not. We'll play the 4.5 if we have to. This is going to be on the card. It just is lean right now. I don't write bet until I've actually physically placed the bet. Again, if you were somebody who knows a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. I can't remember if I said that earlier, but we'll play Indiana. Just going to wait on the number, see what we can't get as this hovers in no man's land. South Carolina, Missouri. Weird game. 13.5-point spread for Missouri, getting a lot of love. 46.5 total. Injuries in the game. Lenora Sellers is allegedly going to be back. South Carolina's just been holding guys out. The only real injuries of note, Judge Collier and Jaquel Holman, both defensive backs. Missouri should be mostly healthy. They lost Sam Horn to begin the year, but injury should not be a big factor in this game. As far as the resume, South Carolina beat Virginia Tech, which is aged poorly, is what it is. They were outgained by Virginia Tech, too. We thought the data points were kind of alarming heading into the Vanderbilt game, and it turns out they were alarming. Now, they did lose Sellers right away in that game, but it was a slaughtering. They committed 4 turnovers. One of those was from Sellers, but otherwise, Vanderbilt just gashed this team, crushed them. So it's kind of a tough spot for South Carolina to be in heading into this contest. They need Sellers. Missouri beat Central Arkansas. They beat a good Kansas team, and they should have won by more. They had a fumble 6, so just handed Kansas 6 points in that game. And they had a 96% post-game win expectancy. They just murdered Louisiana last week, which can't look too much into that. Louisiana lost their starting quarterback in week 1 or 2. So let's look at these offenses. Let's start with the road team. Lenora Sellers is the most important player to this offense. This team, really, this comes as no surprise to anyone, I'm sure. He's mobile, but he's actually caused a lot of problems himself. He has 7 sacks on the year. That is a 38% pressure to sack ratio. Now, his O-line has hung him out to dry, so he's under pressure a lot. But he's taken a ton of sacks, and he needs to be better. He also has 2 turnover-worthy plays. Sellers, he's the engine of the offense, but he also can play him right out of it because the skill players are bad, and maybe they're moving towards something better because first couple of weeks, Rashul Faison not involved. He's the transfer, battled eligibility concerns. Maybe it's just that. Hasn't had enough time to get up to speed, but they need him to play, and he did rip off 5 yards per carry against Vanderbilt. That's better than anything they have. They also appear to have benched some of their receivers, thank goodness, because Nick Harbor, Mazio Bennett, Vandrevius Jacobs, not getting it done. Saw some increases in playing time for freshman 4-stars Donovan Murph and Brian Rowe Jr. I don't know if it's the right choice long-term, but it is the choice that has more upside versus what they were doing with these underachievers through their career. So maybe they're better in the skill room with Faison, Murph, and Rowe playing more. We will see. The offensive line has also made changes. They benched a guard already. They're starting a 4-star freshman in Cedric Surratt. He's played the last 2 games. There's still concerns, though. I mean, this is still a bad offensive line. We knew it was going to be bad coming into the year. Josiah Thompson is still a mess, the 5-star. He's been dreadful. And then Boaz Stanley, their centers from Troy. I mean, this has gone about as expected. I will say Kaysen Henry's been better. Surratt coming in gives them at least some ceiling that they didn't have before. So I don't know. It's just a problem across the board. You have Sellers playing with virtually nothing around him. And then they're facing a pretty good defense. Missouri's defense is currently overachieving compared to expectation. They did a good job against Jalen Daniels, 7.4 yards per attempt. They had 7 starters back on defense with their strength in the most important parts, their secondary and their defensive line. They brought in key transfers. This team is spending money, my goodness. Damon Wilson from Georgia, Jalen Catalon from UNLV. Those are difference-making transfers, and it showed up so far against weaker teams in Kansas. And remember, Kansas puts up 34 points. Some of those were just handed to Kansas by Missouri. Their defense actually played decently. On the other side, you have Bo Prabula, the Penn State transfer at quarterback from Missouri. He's been pretty good, 76% completion, 8.9 yards per attempt. He's very mobile, but he has taken 7 sacks. That's a 26% pressure to sack ratio. A lot better than Sellers, but still not perfect, definitely not ideal. We had questions with the skilled players, and I still kind of do. They've been chipped away at. I think they are slowly answering them. Ahmad Hardy Somehow Missouri just continues to find these G5 transfers, FCS transfers, and plug them in. And Hardy is at 8.1 yards per carry. He's been as advertised. They've actually done a good job replacing Burden and Cooper in the receiving game. Kevin Coleman, the Mississippi State transfer, 258 yards. Marquise Johnson's been awesome. Brett Norfleet has 3 touchdowns. He's been a dynamic red zone weapon. They're still probably worse than last year, but it's a pretty decent receiving room, I must say. The O-line only had 2 starters back. They do go out and add key transfers. Dominic Gadis from Michigan, Keegan Charles from Wake Forest. These are not low-level transfers. The O-line's been a little better than expected. We thought they were going to be solid, but not quite this good. So early returns are good. And then the South Carolina defense. They allowed 6.8 yards per attempt to Diego Pavia, 6.3 to Kyron Drones. They've been pretty good at opposing rushing attacks, but they've always broken. There's a situational, whatever it is with South Carolina, where play well, wheels fall off. So it's hard to evaluate. They've been very banged up. They've been holding guys out. Their secondaries missed a ton of time. Judge Collier is still hurt, so we'll see there. And he's one of their 4 starters they returned, so that hasn't been great. Secondary has been an issue with everything they've replaced, like Omen Wari. You get the point. The defensive line has actually been okay, but they've taken a huge step back in certain areas, particularly rushing the passer. And it makes sense. Yes, you spend the bag on Dylan Stewart. He had an awesome freshman season, but now he is the only player you fear. Opposing teams have and will continue to dedicate extra resources to him. He's had a bad year so far, I would argue, largely because of extra attention from opposing offenses. I think Missouri can move the ball. We actually bet an over in this game. Didn't look at a side very much, and there's a couple of reasons why. First of all, pacing should be pretty good in the contest. We have 2 teams, at least one team in South Carolina playing with an above average pace, but Missouri's played faster than this in the past, expecting them to move towards a more balanced play style. And from there, South Carolina's defense is not one we're respecting. And Missouri's defense, while they've been playing well, I still think there are some questions with this unit. And Sellers back is important to this. So we took an over 46.5. Implied totals, that comes out being a 30 to 16.5. So if you have like a 30 to 17 game, this is over the total. Michigan, Nebraska. I'm really excited for this Big Ten clash. We want to get more answers on both of these teams, especially Nebraska. Michigan beat up on New Mexico, who is actually a pretty decent G5 team this year. They've impressed me. They lose to Oklahoma. First road start for Bryce Underwood is what it is. Both teams missed field goals in that game. Michigan, they had all of the random things go their way. They had a 75-yard touchdown run. They forced 2 turnovers, and they still couldn't win the game. So a lot to be learned for Michigan. They just beat up on Central Michigan. That's kind of irrelevant. For Nebraska, they are 3-0. They beat Akron and Houston Christian, and then they beat Cincinnati in their opener, a game they should have lost. They have a 37% post-game win expectancy. They lost yards per play. The real problem in the game is Cincinnati fumbled on their own 19-yard line, just handing Nebraska a touchdown. And then they threw an interception to basically end the game. So at Cincinnati, quit getting in your own way. Usually Nebraska likes to do that themselves. Injuries. Nebraska is fairly healthy. They don't have any serious ones. Michigan has a lot. Giovanni El-Hadi, I don't think he's going to be back in this game. He got hurt on the offensive line. His replacement, Brady Norton, has also been hurt, but I think he's going to return. He still is a Cal Poly transfer, so I'm not sure you should be excited about this anyway. Otherwise, Mason Curtis and Rod Moore have been banged up in the secondary. It looks like Rod Moore is going to make his debut in this game. At least that is what they tell me. As far as the stylistics, let's start with a road team. And Michigan, Underwood has played reasonably well. Recently, he's unlocked some rushing, 7.7 yards per carry, and he had 0 yards in week 1. So this has all been in the last couple games. He's actually been pretty good. The pressure to sack ratio is 25%. Pass catches have hung him out to dry. 15% drop rate is egregious. That would definitely improve his 56% completion percentage and 7.9 yards per attempt. He does have 3 turnover-worthy plays, so you still do get some of the freshman mistakes. But the infrastructure is better than last year. They are at least passing the ball competently. Justice Haynes is at 7.9 yards per carry. He's running laps around Jordan Marshall. The run game for QBs with Underwood himself is a little bit better. Marlon Klein, while banged up and he missed a game, he's been good at tight end when he's healthy. It looks like he's getting back to form. Donovan McCulley is an actual wide receiver you can rely on, and Samaj Morgan's not a bad rotational player. Plus, it looks like freshman four-star Andrew Marsh is getting his feet wet. There's more upside with this unit than I think people are giving it credit for. The O-line, they have 3 new starters now that El Hadi's hurt. It is a concern with like Norton coming in from Cal Poly. I will say at least the replacements look pretty good against Central Michigan. I just need to see it against a better team, which is what Nebraska will provide. They've been a little bit interesting to evaluate. They got crushed on the ground by Sorsby in week 1, and then they haven't allowed a thing through the air this year. They have a new DC who took a bunch of their starters with him to Florida State. I guess their old DC, I should say, did that. So new DC coming in, 4 starters back. All of them are in the secondary. Early returns there have been awesome. Secondary has been very, very good. You haven't gotten anything on them through the air. And I actually think Sorsby's a little underrated. That's the main data point we have to look at through the air. The front 7 is the biggest question, but they have a lot of good transfers. Dasan McCullough from Oklahoma, Williams Nwaneri from Missouri. He's the 5-star. Marcus Watson Trent, over 100 tackles last year with Georgia Southern. I actually like this defense. It is not going to be easy for Michigan to come up and move the ball on this team, especially with Michigan relying on the run. So this is a good defensive line. I do think the run defense holes are a problem if you can get QB runs for Nebraska. On Nebraska, that is. Sorsby did it. Can Underwood do it? I still don't think so. So tentatively thinking Nebraska can stop Michigan at least at some points in this game. On the other side, Raiola has played better. They have a new OC who took over midway through last year, and that's where we started seeing improvements. It's just kind of not flashy again. 76.5% completion, 8.8 yards per attempt, 2 turnover-worthy plays. He doesn't run the ball. They rarely push the ball down the field. It's a non-explosive offense. They are improved just about everywhere. The running game is middling, but Emmett Johnson's a quality back, 6.3 yards per carry. Dane Key from Kentucky and Isaiah Hunter from Cal. These are upgrades in the receiving game. Plus, Barney's been playing well with 181 yards. They have a 4-star freshman in Cortez Mills who's getting more involved. It's a better group of skill position players for Nebraska this year. And their O-line is awesome. We thought this was going to be a top 3 Big Ten unit coming into the year, largely with better health. They plugged some gaps with players like Rocco Spindler from Notre Dame. Teddy Prochazka is back, and he's playing well. This is a good offensive line. Now, Michigan's defense, they definitely have some problems and some concerns. 6 starters came back. 7 of them, I guess the front 7 was not 7 of them, but the 6 starters back, and most of them being in the front 7, largely the edge group. They did lose some defensive tackles, which has been a problem for them in a couple of spots. But really all they've allowed is 7.9 yards per attempt to John Mateer, a few decent runs, but they're still holding opponents under 3.5 yards per carry. I think the early returns on the new defensive linemen are okay to above average, maybe with a ceiling for more. The secondary, they still come in 13th, and they haven't had players like Rod Moore back. This is a work in progress, but I think there is a ceiling here for this team as well. We just haven't seen it yet. Barham's been suspended for half of football. He's been the key to their pass rush. So I think the talent is great. There's just still questions with Michigan as they kind of try to put this all together. But overall, we took an over 45.5 rather than a side. I might take Nebraska. I think a home dog Nebraska, who is a good team, an upstart team that sort of started sleepy against Cincinnati, is worth a look. But as far as the over goes in this game, you might be surprised at the pacing for both teams. Nebraska is playing well above average in pace, and we actually regressed that down to what we saw last year for them, which was the below average pace. And then Michigan, they're 58th in pass rate. The tempo for them, they're 58th in tempo. The pass rate's not bad. It'll be a little higher in games that are competitive. You actually have a pretty good tempo in this game. It comes in right around average. So that helps you towards an over. I actually like Underwood and Raiola. You have 2 5-star signal callers. The main hesitation I have if you're looking at something and saying, I don't really want to bet this over, it's the defenses I think are pretty good for both teams. Nebraska has more turnover at impactful spots. Michigan, they have a lot of production to replace as well. So there definitely are concerns where you can get to an over on this game. The score only needs to be you need to eclipse a 24 to 21 and a half team total for each side. That's like if you have a 27-21 game, this comes in over. Anyway, we'll likely play in Nebraska. Maybe we get a +3. Michigan's taking money. That would be a go at that point. Tulane, Ole Miss. Interesting game here. Tulane is overachieved. They're 11.5-point dogs to Ole Miss with a 61 total. They beat Northwestern, won the turnover battle 5-0. They beat South Alabama in a weird game. They actually lost yards per play. 2-point game. Had a 54% post-game win expectancy. This is big. Very, very close. And then they beat Duke, another team that beat themselves. 24-34. It is what it is. Duke has been a mess. They missed a field goal. They had a field goal blocked in the game. They had 2 turnover on downs. I just like, come on, Duke. What are we doing here? You've done this against Tulane and Illinois now. I was on both of them. On the Ole Miss side, they played, it might not seem like they've played good teams, but they have played 2 SEC teams, 2 bottom-end SEC teams, but still. And they played Georgia State, who's, a G5 team, not a good one, but still. They beat Kentucky by 7. They beat Arkansas by 6. Should have won by more probably in both games. Arkansas actually had chances to make this a game with 2 field goal misses. Kentucky was a disaster, so that is what it is. But injury-wise, Tulane, we have Maurice Turner at running back. Mississippi is Jalen Braxton, defensive back. I listed Caleb Cunningham at receiver. He's probably not going to play this year. But the big story with Ole Miss is Austin Simmons. And do they decide to make a QB change at some point? You have to at least consider it, but it doesn't appear like they're going to. Simmons is their crown jewel recruit sitting, waiting in the wings for a while. But he has an ankle sprain. I think that probably affects his mobility. As a passer, he has a 61% completion, 10.4 yards per attempt, 3 big-time throws, 5 turnover-worthy plays, 4 have been converted to interceptions. He's making the young player mistakes still, and they need to be cut down because it's going to cost him a game eventually. The skill players are a little worse than last year, but still more than fine. Harrison Wallace has been awesome, averaging over 100 yards per game. Good rotational players, Deuce Alexander, Daquan Bright at tight end. They haven't even gotten anything out of Caden Lee, Dazon Stribling, or Luke Haas for various reasons. Haas, it's been injury. So it's a good skill position group. The main problem is their O-line. It's awful. 1 starter came back. Predictably, this has been a problem. They've one above-average pass blocker in Jaden Williams, but none of these guys have even approached average play. They're getting their quarterbacks killed behind them. It's a miracle, honestly, that the pressure rate hasn't been higher for these guys. And maybe you have to talk about moving to Trinidad Chambliss at some point, the D2 transfer. He just had an awesome game against Arkansas. Now it is Arkansas. That's still probably the best defense they've faced so far. Toss up between them and Kentucky. But they're going to be facing Tulane's defense, who has a lot of questions. In my opinion, they allowed 9.7 yards per attempt to Bishop Davenport. They just allowed 6.1 to Darian Mensah at Duke. It should have been worse. They had 5.8 yards per carry allowed to Duke, 4.6 to South Alabama. They were supposed to be strong up front, but they've been very bad in run defense. The pressure has been okay with Mo Westmoreland from UTEP and Harvey Dyson, but they've had problems in the secondary. Dixon Agu has been a problem for this team. They need to bench him. There's weak links across the board. Ole Miss is going to exploit this, just flat out. They're too talented of an offense. The main matchup advantage for Tulane is this pass rush. Still probably not enough. On the other side, Jake Retzlaff, he's basically just winning on the ground. 7.2 yards per carry, 6 touchdowns. The pressure rate's high at 34%. Passing game has been atrocious. Not his fault either. They're a low-volume passing attack, but when they do throw, his receivers have 12 drops. That's 21% of his passes. 58% completion, 6.6 yards per attempt. He does have 3 turnover-worthy plays, so it's not all his receivers' fault, but most of it is. And speaking to that, Omari Hayes from FAU, Shaz Preston from LSU, they've been awful. That's it, really, for pass game. And Maurice Turner's been hurt in the run game. He averages 6.1 yards per carry, but he got hurt after week 1, hasn't returned yet. He was supposed to return last week and didn't. We'll see. It's a problem. And the O-line's a problem, too. They had 2 guys back. They were good. I mean, Shadre Hurst is awesome, but you still have to replace 3 guys. They had 2 transfers, Jack Holifield from App State, Jordan Hall from Liberty. They already benched Darian Reed, one of the replacements. This O-line was supposed to be better than it is. They have not found the starting 5 that has succeeded so far. It is a miracle that Retzlaff has been able to overcome this infrastructure. These pass catchers are bad. This O-line is bad. Mississippi's defense has been bad. They only had 3 starters back. They allowed 5.5 yards per carry to Georgia State, 4.6 to Kentucky, 6.0 to Arkansas. They've been gashed by mobile quarterbacks. Taylon Green got them. So maybe Retzlaff can do this. I'm just kind of buying low on this defensive line. This was supposed to be the strength of the team. Xavier Harris, Will Eccles, Suntarine Perkins, Cam Franklin. The pass rush has been non-existent. What has gone on with Suntarine Perkins and Cam Franklin? The secondary continues to shuffle guys around. I think they're going to bench Nick Cull at some point. He is allowed a team high 177 yards. Ricky Fletcher is also back from injury. Perhaps he sees more time in this game. But it's hard for me not to like a Mississippi Ole Miss side. I keep saying Mississippi. It's hard for me to not like Ole Miss. The number is a little treacherous at the 11.5 in no man's land. I think an under is in play in this game. Ole Miss probably gets whatever they want. Tulane's offense I'm very concerned with. Retzlaff has been living as dangerously as a quarterback can. There is no infrastructure to speak of. Tulane's pace is very slow at 109. Could neutralize Ole Miss and their 9th ranked pace. Pass rate is definitely low for both teams. Under 61 is the preferred play right now, but I'm seriously considering an Ole Miss side. We will look at this closely through the week. Arizona State takes on Baylor. This is a 2-point spread in favor of Baylor. Weird spot. Both teams have disappointed to some degree. Arizona State, of course, lost to Mississippi State. They were soundly beat in that contest. Nothing weird there. They just beat Texas State, who had 2 turnovers, which basically cost them the game. Baylor lost to Auburn in a game they had chances to win, but penalties, 3 turnover on downs, 2 of them in the red zone. Couldn't stop the run is what it is. They beat SMU in a shootout where they probably should have lost. And then they beat Samford. So what do we make of this weird game between Big 12 opponents? Injury-wise, a couple defensive players for Arizona State. Xavier Alford, Boogie Wilson have been hurt. Swanson hasn't played yet on the defensive line. Baylor's Carl Williams has been banged up. And they lost Phoenix Jackson at linebacker in their last game. Not sure if they're going to play. Sam Levitt has taken a major step back. And it's crazy how much the Scadaboo departure has hurt this team. 57% completion percentage, 6.1 yards per attempt, 5 turnover-worthy plays. He is still very mobile, 5.8 yards per carry, but he has taken 7 sacks. His pass catchers are just worse. I mean, you've got Jordan Tyson, and then the rest of the group is a disaster. They have an 11% drop rate. They tried to play a walk-on and a Subio. That went poorly, so they've gone to 12 personnel. That's gone poorly. There's nothing outside of Tyson in this pass game. Fortunately, their run game is really good. Kyson Brown's been hurt, but that's just allowed Raleek Brown into a full-time role. 8.3 yards per carry. He just erupted over the weekend. The O-line is projected to be a middling to below average unit despite returning 4 starters. I'm not going to lie, their run game looked decent last year. That was all Scadabo after contact. Their O-line did not have good metrics, yards generated before contact. It's not a strength of this team. So their development's not been great. It's another situation like Illinois where they're just not the most talented group. You return a lot of guys, but a ceiling that is likely capped because of their recruitment. On defense, I don't know what to make of Baylor. This is kind of like Illinois as well. We thought the strength was going to be up front. The secondary was going to be the problem, just like last year. It's been the opposite. The secondary is 20th and the run defense is 128th. They have gotten gashed through the air. Kevin Jennings threw for 13.4 yards per attempt, but the real problem's been on the ground with Jackson Arnold getting them. They've allowed a lot of production. And part of that is injuries. Jackie Marshall's been hurt, and he's been playing through injury clearly. He's one of their few returning starters. And he's the only one on the defensive line that's back. So you've got a completely remade D-line. It's been atrocious so far. You had more secondary starters back, and it appears whether they've improved or not, I'm not sure. But it does look like teams are just choosing to take the path of least resistance straight up the middle on Baylor. That's a matchup advantage for Arizona State through and through in this game. On the other side, Toya Robertson has been good, kind of up and down, 62% completion, 8 yards per attempt. He does have 5 turnover-worthy plays. He's not much of a runner, but his pressure to sack ratio is very low, so can't really fault him there for not running. Pass catchers have dropped 10.5% of his passes as well, so They've been good. They're certainly better than Arizona State, and they're much deeper. Just on paper, you can tell. You have Ashton Hawkins, Josh Cameron, Cole Wilson transferred in from Texas State, Kobe Prentice transferred in from Bama, Michael Trigg still there at tight end. They're better than what they've done so far. In their run game, I don't really know what to make of this. Like, Bryson Washington is plummeted, 4.6 yards per carry. The offensive line has been good too. Maybe this is truly just Pendergrass is not there to take some load off and he's wearing down. I don't have the answer for why he's played poorly. He should be better than this. And again, the O-line is good. We expected this to be one of the better O-lines in the Big 12. They had 4 starters back. All of them played well last year. They have had to make a change already, though. Colton Price has been benched for Colton Siraki. Siraki has been their best offensive lineman on a small sample, so I firmly believe in this change. This is one for the better, it looks like, on paper. Arizona State's defense, just like their O-line, like somehow they got worse, returning 9 starters. I think this speaks to 2 things. Again, 1, they're not the most talented defense on paper. 2, they lived super dangerously last year, winning close games. And a lot of them they should have lost based on post-game win expectation. The strength is their secondary. Keith Abney, I guess, probably their best player. But this group is pretty average. They've had some injuries. A lot of players have regressed just straight up year 1 to year 2 in the system. Baylor's going to pressure you. Baylor's one of the best offenses in the conference. This is not a good situation for Arizona State's defense. I think it's Baylor minus a 2 or pass. And over 59.5 makes some sense to me. I'm probably going to take this Baylor side. I'm not going to lie. Money's coming in on Arizona State, but I'm not really buying this team. They don't have any weapons outside of Tyson and maybe Raleek Brown. Quarterback's taking a step back. O-line and defense have regressed more towards their talent level compared to last year. Baylor has some similar problems, but I don't think it's a quick enough adjustment on Arizona State. We'll lean Baylor. We'll look at it throughout the week. Arkansas, Memphis. 7-point spread in favor of the road team. Arkansas, 63 total. Injuries. Connie Walker had to get stretchered off their last game for Arkansas, one of their defensive backs. Memphis was without DB Chauncey Logan and running back Greg DeRosier. Resume-wise, Arkansas played 2 cupcakes, Alabama, A&M, and Arkansas State before losing to Ole Miss again in a game they had chances to at least make it a game with 2 missed field goals, but Ole Miss played better than them straight up. Basically no punts in the whole game. Memphis has now beaten up Chattanooga, Georgia State, and Troy. Troy's QB got hurt in the game, explaining their 2.0 yards per play. All right. QBs, I really respect Taylor Green. I think he's one of the better QBs in the SEC. He's been awesome this year with 9.6 yards per carry with a team that has kind of hung him out to dry, skill position players. Mike Washington's been good. I'm pleasantly surprised by the 8.4 yards per carry from the New Mexico State transfer. The passing game, I am not giving these players credit. I have to believe this is Taylor Green. He's now done this with multiple players. You bring in a Charlotte transfer and Omega Blake, and yes, he's a 4-star. He previously played at a high level of competition. But Jaylen Brown, CJ Brown, like these players have largely been failures. I'm sorry. Taylor Green has been awesome at maximizing these kind of guys. So it's not the worst skill position group. I do not think it's the best. The O-line was projected as an average to below average unit. They've actually done a good job, I think. They're portaling Caden Kittler from UCF, Corey Robinson from Georgia Tech. The O-line, I think, had to get an upgrade. So the offense in general is a little better than we thought. But with that said, they haven't really played anyone good yet. Ole Miss's defense is still a problem. I will say an SEC problem is better than, like a G5 problem. So credit still needs to be given to Arkansas. Now you face Memphis, who I'm not buying at all. 1 defensive starter return. They cobbled together this defense in the portal. It was projected to be the 3rd best in the American, but that's still the American. They allowed 8.2 yards per attempt to Georgia State. I mean, they just have not faced an opponent with an offense ranked higher than 97th so far. Arkansas ranks 19th. So, yeah, I like what Memphis has shown with a completely new defense, but I don't think we can give it enough credit where we think it's going to stop Arkansas's offense, which is just vastly better than any opponent they've faced. Meanwhile, I'm not a Brendan Lewis guy. I never have been. He has played well with Memphis so far. He has 190 rushing yards. That is 5.9 yards per carry. His pressure to sack ratio is a little high at 28%, but his pass catchers have dropped 11% of his passes. They've hung him out to dry. And still he has a 73% completion percentage, 8.1 yards per attempt. But again, the competition's been so weak for Memphis. In the skill position rooms, running back's been okay. Again, Day Receiver is out. So Sutton Smith, he kind of had a breakout game last week. So he's now up to 6.0 yards per carry. He's very fast. I don't think the receivers are any good. They basically turned over their whole unit with Jamari Hawkins. Now he's an incumbent, but playing up a role. Cortez Braham from Nevada, he barely got cleared to play this year. Those are your top two. It just leaves a little to be desired. The O-line had two back with experience. They weren't even full-time starters. So you had transfers, Parker Mitchell from Richmond, Yakiri Walker from Colorado, previously of UConn, Travis Burke from FIU. Again, this is kind of the theme. This was projected to be a top 3 American O-line, but you're still looking at transfers from Richmond and UConn and FIU. Like, are we really putting a lot of stock in this? I need to see it against a better team first and foremost. And then Arkansas's defense. So they lost a ton. They were projected to be an awful SEC defense. Only 5 starters back. Their best one was a defensive tackle, Cameron Ball. Lost a lot of position coaches, their secondary coach. Their O-line D-line has actually been pretty good. Quincy Rhodes and Philip Leave got after the quarterback. They come in 17th there, but they only have one good corner in Julian Neal. They just lost Connie Walker. They're vulnerable in the secondary now. Run defense with Ball has not been fantastic, even though he was the best returning starter. I still think you want to throw over the top of Arkansas if you can, which is, I personally think, not the biggest strength for Brennan Lewis, but we'll see. I mean, we still made this around the 7. We had a slight value on Memphis, just from a betting perspective, plus 7.5. That's now down to plus 7. So you're quickly losing value. And with this passing a key number, moving towards what we make the spread, just not really a lot of value. We also have the total at 60.5. So maybe you could look at under, but I'm a little nervous with both teams defensively to make a play like that. All right. Michigan State, USC, Big Ten clash, kind of. Big Ten out west, Big Ten after dark. I don't know what you want to call it. Anyway, Michigan State to get here beat Western Michigan in a game that was closer than the score indicated, 23-6. They had a shootout against Boston College with a win, 42-40, but they lost yards per play, and they had a 25% post-game win expectancy. They followed that up with a win over Youngstown State, where they hold out a lot of guys. Meanwhile, USC beat Missouri State, crushed them. Georgia Southern crushed them. Purdue, they win 33-17. Yards per play advantage was 6.9 to 5.3. Purdue had a pick 6. They also had 2 other interceptions in USC territory. That was the whole game. You can't throw a pick 6. You can't turn the ball over twice going into score. Outside of that, Purdue moved the ball well. So I'm optimistic on Purdue. Questions on USC? Most of the entries in the game, at least the important ones, are on the Michigan State side. Marsh is listed. He didn't play in the second half last week, but I think he's okay. Otherwise, not much to be said with either team for impactful injuries. A couple depth guys. Aiden Charles maybe has taken a little bit of a step forward, 71.5% completion, 8.1 yards per attempt, but he still has 3 turnover-worthy plays. Most of that occurred early in the year. He's up to 4.1 yards per carry, but he still has taken 8 sacks. Pressure rate's not horrible, but his O-line is getting him pressured a lot, 35% of the time, and that's just it. This was supposed to be an average O-line on paper with 2 starters back, but only one of them is starting, Stanton Ramil. They're doing some weird stuff. Like Christian Phillips, I thought was going to start after he tried to start last year, but got hurt. Instead, they decided to start Caleb Carter over him for Western Carolina. That's gone horribly, as you can imagine, the Western Carolina transfer. Believe it or not, like G5 transfers just generally aren't that good. Michigan State is starting another one in Connor Moore from Montana State, who's been okay. Matt Gulbin from Wake Forest. But, I mean, the confidence level is lower with this O-line, just with the coaching staff and who they decided to start. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. Their skill players are better, not in the run game, but Kai Frazier and Brandon Toulis have been all right. But Nick Marsh is in alpha, 194 yards. Amari Kelly and Krishawn McCray have been decent as role players from Middle Tennessee and Kent State. And they've actually had the ability to play some 12 with Michael Masunas and Jack Velling at tight end. So I like that. Just the O-line is getting Aiden Charles killed right now, and I'm not sure the coaching staff is making the right decisions there. And again, I'll reiterate this. Just because we go into the season with our depth chart projections that don't match the actual depth chart, one, it doesn't mean we were wrong. It doesn't mean that they're wrong for doing it either. Generally, what happens in those situations where you end up with a G5 or an FCS transfer starting over a highly recruited player, it's not that the G5 transfer or the FCS transfer is somehow a first-round NFL draft pick, absolute stud. Most likely what happened is the player that we projected higher incorrectly did not live up to expectation, which lowers your baseline overall for the position as a whole. And that's what we've seen with Michigan State. Yes, we projected some players on the offensive line, Christian Phillips, to start. They haven't, and they turned to a Western Carolina transfer. It's lowered the entire offensive line across the board. So that's generally what happens when that happens. USC's defense has made strides. They have not played the best competition. Ryan Brown did somehow get to 7.8 yards per attempt. But we did expect year 1 to year 2 growth under new DC D'Anton Lynn. Their secondary, on top of bringing back players like Kamari Ramsey, added some elite transfers. Their pass defense looks vastly improved. The D-line was the biggest concern on paper coming into the season, but there was also upside with this unit. It's littered with 4- and 5-star talent. Cameron Fountain, Anthony Lucas, Jide Abasiri is a 4-star sophomore, Braylon Shelby. Most of these players are young, highly recruited players. I am perhaps maybe was overlooking this with a very good DC, at least on paper. With this kind of talent, we probably should have expected more growth. So that's on me. I think this USC defense is going to have a field day, especially against this offensive line for Michigan State. This edge group should cause a lot of problems. On the other side, Maeva's been pretty good. He still is turning, and he hasn't turned the ball over, but he's put the ball in harm's way. 3 turnover-worthy plays. He's not running a lot, but he still only has taken 1 sack, 68.5% completion, 14.1 yards per attempt. Kind of makes sense. Just put the ball where your guys can get them. You have elite skilled players, Waymon Jordan, Eli Sanders, both over 7 yards per carry. Makai Lemon, Jacoby Lane, legit prospects for the NFL at receiver. Lake McCree is 173 yards at tight end. They haven't even gotten freshman 4-star Tunuk Hines fully involved yet. I mean, it's a great cast of skilled players. The biggest concern is the O-line, just like Michigan State. This was a massive concern heading into the season. Only Elijah Page was projected as a decent returning starter. They've changed lineups a few times already this year against their weak competition. Most of the time, you're seeing former 0-star walk-on Killian O'Connor start at center. That's going to be a problem for them. Can Michigan State exploit this? I think there are parallels between the Michigan State defense and the USC defense. They did not do a good job against Dylan Lonergan from Boston College, 8.7 yards per attempt, but they have held opposing running backs to 3.7 yards per carry or worse. They had, as far as starters returning, they had 4 back. So we kind of had the defense projected below average to start the year. It's kind of what they've turned in, but they did just get Nakai Martinez back in the secondary that helps that unit. The linebacker room was always going to be strong. They had 3 starters back there. The defensive line was the concern. But similar to USC, they have a lot of 4-star talent on this unit. Jalen Thompson, Alex Van Sumeren, Ben Roberts. It was mainly a talent maximization question. They hadn't done it. Could they do it? Early returns are pretty good. So I'm somewhat interested in this D-line, maybe causing more problems than we thought this season, which leads me to an under among many things. We currently have the defenses getting a slight uptick compared to where we saw them in the preseason. And then from there, when you look at pacing, both of these teams, I think, are actually candidates to play maybe a little faster, but with that. So current pacing, you have Michigan State 107th, USC 110th. Last year, both of those teams were faster. I ran the numbers with last year's paces. We still make this under the 55.5. So last year's pace, we get a 54 total. You run it with this year's current pacing, which is much slower than last year's pacing, we still come in under. So this makes a lot of sense for me mathematically. Quarterback questions on both sides, more so with Michigan State. Defensive improvements made on both sides. We will play an under with these paces. Purdue, Notre Dame, last game we'll get to today. Notre Dame looks to get their first win of the season. They're 26.5-point favorites against Purdue, the most recent opponent of USC. Totals 55.5 in this game as well. Purdue beat Ball State and Southern Illinois before they played USC. Again, pick six, 2 turnovers in USC territory. That's going to swing the game, and that's exactly why they lost. Notre Dame has played 2 contests because they had a week 2 bye. They lose to Miami with a 49% post-game win expectancy, and they lose to Texas A&M with a 34% post-game win expectancy. Biggest concern with Notre Dame, at least right now, their DC moving a heavy man defense to this very weak zone. Quarterback is telegraphing pass and run plays with his stance. I don't know. It just kind of is what it is. But fortunately, Notre Dame has had their 2 toughest games. Schedule gets a lot easier from here. Injury-wise, Chauncey Magwood, Denylon Morris have been out. It's nothing different from Purdue compared to the first couple weeks. Aiden Schuler is suspended for the first half for targeting, and then Devontae Smith, who's kind of been an afterthought for this secondary, has been hurt. Leonard Morse also listed questionable. He exited last game and came back. Secondary is up in the air for Notre Dame with injuries. But anyway, let's start with Ryan Brown and Purdue. He's been okay. He has 3 turnover-worthy plays and 4 interceptions, so he's run bad on the turnovers. He is mobile, but he has taken 7 sacks. The big problem is a 37% pressure rate, an 11% drop rate from his receivers. The infrastructure is just not that good. You look at the run game, you have the definition of mid, and Devin Mockabee back again. Fortunately, he doesn't make mistakes. All of your receivers are basically highly recruited cast-offs like Michael Jackson from USC and Georgia, Nitro Tuggle from Georgia. EJ Horton's kind of the opposite from FAU, but it's decent. It's not great, and that's kind of the pass game, the run game. The O-line is bad, just straight up bad. The expectation was below average. It might be worse than that. They have 2 decent starters, Joey Tenona and Braden Joyner. Joyner's from Auburn. But they had 0 starters back from last year. I mean, they're only starting 2 transfers. A lot of these are just depth, unproven guys. It's not a good infrastructure for Purdue. So I think Notre Dame's defense can rebound. I don't know what to make of Chris Ash. I think he clearly is worse, and he's minimized the defense. But with that said, they lost some very important players to the NFL. They lost a lot of depth pieces to transfer. Urlacher's gone. They have a Boise State transfer who's a starter on Boise State now. Like, they just don't have as much depth. And then they have players in and out of this game. Christian Gray, Leonard Moore, Schuler gets a targeting. So you've got guys like Carson Hobbs starting. He's been absolutely atrocious. I don't know if they need to replace him, develop him, whatever it is. You lose 2 on your defensive line. Donovan Heinisch has not been able to step up. And again, some of these players look good last year in spots. Coaching is playing a role. But Notre Dame's defense had 9 players back with over 400 snaps because of how much they rotated. Pass rush needs to be better. There's no excuse. Players like Botello are back from injury. I'm just not sure. Fortunately, Purdue's a much weaker opponent than what we've seen. Notre Dame is definitely better than 118. They might be closer to average, though, with what Chris Ash is doing with this defense. I'm just not really sure. The big thing this week, I guess, from a narrative coaching staff perspective, is that Marcus Freeman said he's going to spend more time with the defense. Please do, my man. Please do. Please do. On the other side, kind of the opposite, CJ Carr's been awesome. 60% completion, 7.9 yards per attempt. He does have 3 turnover-worthy plays and only 1 big-time throw. But hasn't taken a ton of sacks. And in general, the counting stats have been good for Carr. It's better than I expected, which, again, we're trying to evaluate everything on expectation. And their best player, Jeremiah Love, is averaging 3.3 yards per carry. He has been soundly outplayed by Jadarian Price, which I did not expect. I also did not expect Eli Raridon to lead all pass catchers from the tight end position with 182 yards. Malachi Fields, 125 yards. He's the only other player over 100. Again, only 2 games for this team. But Jordan Faison, Jaden Greathouse, Will Pauling from Wisconsin, they're better than last year, but they still need more from these players. The O-line has been a mess. Now, they played 2 good defensive lines. Miami might be one of the best pass rushing units in the country, and Texas A&M is probably not all that far behind. But Notre Dame's 3 returning starters, mid at best, Emil Wagner and Anthony Knapp, have been disasters. So it's kind of a tough thing to evaluate. The O-line on paper was expected to be much better than this, but clearly they played under expectation against 2 very good teams. Where does Purdue fall in this? Well, Purdue's 96th in total defense. I think they're much, much, much worse than A&M and Miami. They allowed 10.1 yards per attempt to Maeva. They lost their top 17 in terms of snaps. Basically, it's a transfer-heavy unit, as their entire team is. We had their defense projected 2nd worst in the Big Ten, ahead of only Maryland. So expecting this to be much easier going for Notre Dame across the board. If we had to take anything, it would be an over in this contest. A couple reasons why. Purdue is playing much faster under the new staff. Currently, they're 24th in pace. Notre Dame is 70th. I don't think they want to play that fast, but negative game script has led them to an above average pace. So we have avenues of success for both teams. I was impressed with Purdue's ability to move the ball on USC's defense. Just can we erase the turnovers? And then Notre Dame's offense, as good as they've looked, they should move the ball on Purdue. With this above average pace, I think you could look at an over 55.5. I'm going to debate it. I think a lot of it comes down to how you think these paces react moving forward in Notre Dame. Do they slow the ball a ton in positive game script? We will see. But that is where we lean, and that will do it for us today. Again, if you have recommendations for the Greasy video, please leave them. It's a longer video today because we did do 12 instead of 10 games. But thank you for watching. It means a lot. We'll see you again next time. And until then, good luck.